Hi, I'm Mark Olives, and today I'd like to talk about carbohydrates and diabetes. I work with a lot of patients, and it's disturbing to me to find out that most diabetics do not know much about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, just to start out, would be like rice, pasta, cereals, fruits. Pretty much any grain product is considered a carbohydrate. Those are not to be avoided. If you went to the American Diabetes Association website, you would find that even diabetics should consume 45 to 55% of their diet from carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are not bad. I frequently hear people tell me, well, I don't want to eat carbohydrates because I know they turn into sugar. And I always say, and that's bad, why? Well, we all know sugar's bad for us. Well, table sugar, I would agree, is not good for you. So cookies, candies, cakes, those kinds of things, yes, they're not healthy, they're not good for you. But blood sugar is instrumental to life. If your blood sugar drops down too low, you will pass out and go unconscious. If it drops to zero, unfortunately, we're going to dig a hole and bury you because you're going to be dead. Sugar is energy. Sugar is the same thing as gasoline to your car. If you don't put gasoline in your car, it runs out of gas and does not work. If you run out of sugar, you will not work, and that becomes a big problem. So we need to have carbohydrate coming into our body to provide blood sugar. Also, as just a quick aside, I tell people, in the absence of carbohydrate, guess what turns into sugar? Fats and proteins. They will also convert into sugar or carbohydrate. I tell people all roads are going to lead to the same place. You're going to get energy out of all the food that you consume. If we consume it as a human for food, it will have to be able to convert to an energy source that our bodies utilize and recognize, and that is blood sugar. So the idea of avoiding carbohydrate because it's going to turn into blood sugar is completely preposterous. It needs to happen. It's going to happen. Whether you have carbohydrate or you don't have carbohydrate, you're going to get sugar from somewhere. Another way to look at things is, right now, I'm not eating. So I must be getting my sugar from somewhere. And where that sugar comes from is storage within my muscles and in my liver. So it's constantly being doled out. Now, just as if I drive my car around, what am I using? I'm using gasoline. So what happens to my gas tank? It's going down. If I'm not eating, but I'm still alive, I've got to be getting energy out of my muscles and out of my liver. So I'm constantly utilizing sugar out of those tissues. It's going into the bloodstream and getting utilized. So it only makes sense at some point I need to put gas back in the tank. That means I need to eat some carbohydrate. I eat or consume the carbohydrates, they go down into my body, go back into storage, not into fat, but back into the muscle and into the liver, where they store to help me sustain life until I get to my next meal. So that's kind of the simple explanation as for how your carbohydrates work. Diabetics, because they're insulin resistant, can't have too many carbohydrates at once. And insulin resistance is simply that your cells need to have insulin present to help transport the sugar from out of the bloodstream into the cells. Without insulin present, the sugar has an extremely difficult time making it in. So if you're resistant to insulin, if your cells say, hey, we don't want you insulin, then you don't get the sugar into the cells, and that creates a problem. So if a diabetic consumes too much carbohydrate at once, blood sugar cannot get pushed into the cells. There's not enough need or demand at the time to need the energy in the cells, and so consequently, those resistant cells keep the blood sugar high or elevate the blood sugar to a point where now the blood becomes thick and viscous, doesn't flow through the arteries well, and you have difficulty getting circulation to tissues, which then can cause cellular death and other problems. So we don't want the sugar levels to get too high. So how much carbohydrate can I eat? How much carbohydrate should I eat? As a diabetic, the American Diabetes Association would tell you that 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrate per episode is what you want, no more than that. Now, a lot of people groan and think, oh my God, now you're gonna make me measure my food. I'm gonna have to start looking at labels and looking for how many grams of carbohydrate are in something. I tell people that's certainly a good idea, and I do encourage people to read labels. It is helpful. You'll be extremely surprised at a lot of things. But I try and make things more simplistic because simplicity is what's going to get compliance. So I tell people another way to look at 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrate is it's roughly equivalent to 200 calories worth of carbohydrate. All right, but we're still kind of back to reading labels for the most part. So I tell people, let's make it even more simplistic. Don't eat more than this much, or a fist size, of carbohydrate at a time. So say if you took a piece of bread and you squished it up, it roughly equaled the size of your fist volume-wise. Don't eat more than that. If you had a piece of fruit, that's about the same volume, same thing. Don't eat more than that. Cereal, bowl of cereal, you'll be fine. Thing of rice, you'll be fine. So again, a lot of diabetics, I find that they're wanting to shy away from the carbohydrate. I say don't do that. You need that carbohydrate. As another motivator, I tell people, studies have shown that high protein diets lead to kidney inflammation, which kidney inflammation then leads to kidney disease. And guess what's the number one predictor of kidney failure or renal disease? It's diabetes. So now if I put myself on a high protein diet and I have diabetes, I'm greatly setting myself at risk for developing problems with my kidneys. I don't want that. So again, if I'm starting to limit my carbohydrate, there's only two other foods available. I'm either going to eat fat or protein. So I want to make sure that I don't do that, because that's going to skew my nutrient ratio in a negative fashion. I want to make sure the majority of my food is coming from carbohydrates. I just don't want to get too much at one time. So just remember, keep your carbohydrate to the size of your fist every time you eat, and you'll be fine. So I hope that helps you out. Thanks.